With yet another Pet Sematary movie upon us, how will we handle Bloodlines? Can it live up to what the standard of the series is? What is the standard of the series of Pet Sematary movies? Is it worth the watch? We will discuss that now in this video. Hello Flickering Myth family and welcome to our channel. My name is EJ and I want to say thank you first off for joining us for this video. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing. If you're new here, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and leave us a comment what you think about this review. For this video, we will be discussing Pet Sematary Bloodlines, the latest Pet Sematary movie, a prequel to the franchise, and something all new and original for a Pet Sematary film. There is a lot to dive into, so let's get into it right now. Trust me when I say I understand any hesitation to watching a new Pet Sematary movie. What more could they do with this franchise? How could they redo it after the original film, that weird sequel that it had that I do like, and also the remake that we just had in 2019? Well, thankfully, Bloodlines answered that question by saying, let's take it back to the past. Let's go into the root of what Pet Sematary is all about. This movie actually had a stronger story than I could have imagined. Thankfully, it's not limited by the Stephen King novel. I really do enjoy what Stephen King crafted with his iconic 80s book, but it's a very limited, novel. There's not too much you can do, and then with the first film and even the remake, it feels so small in scale and scope. Now, Pet Sematary 2, Mary Lambert, my goodness, what a wild, crazy movie that is, that didn't feel restrained by making a standard Pet Sematary story. That's what I love about Bloodlines. This movie actually has some freedom. It's able to stretch itself. Is it the best horror film I've seen all year? No, there are some things that lack in this. I definitely think the script is fine from the story idea, but I lack in a lot of the pacing of this. I think some of the scares, while well crafted, just kind of lead to not a lot. This movie it has a lot of pieces going for it. Lindsey Alyn Beer, the filmmaker behind this, is a first-time filmmaker, and you can see some of that trying to figure out her voice, her cinematic language, especially with venturing into the horror film. So this movie does have it does feel weighed down a bit. It doesn't feel as grandiose as it could. It definitely at times feels like something you would throw on streaming, but that's not bad. Like, this is a movie that I definitely would recommend checking out on Paramount Plus when it drops. You're going to have a good time. If you're familiar with the Pet Sematary story, you're going to be happy to see some things expanded on. And if you're just like, how could they make a new Pet Sematary story? Check this out to see how they can actually try to reinvent what was there before. It is the summer of 1969, and Jud Crandall is about to leave his small town. Boy, has he been here for too long, and it's pretty crazy. We're in the 60s, so we're dealing with the Vietnam War. He's trying to figure out why he's not getting drafted. There's definitely an interesting moment there. He's also dealing with his friendship, his group of friends kind of splitting apart as they've gotten older. We have one returning from Nam who is not the same as he was when he left. There was a lot more to that. This movie has a really good idea, watching Jud's story, but there's also the Manny character who is a Native American boy, and we also have his sister who are also trying to live life in this town, and we figure out why these two families are so important to the bloodline of the Pet Sematary universe. We go back in time. There's a really cool segment where we spend in like the 1600s to figure out why this place was even able to have this Pet Sematary be kind of exposed to this town. There's a lot of good fleshing out of the story, and again, I really like what Jud has to go through. I think he's an interesting character. I think we saw an actor try his best. These characters are a bit flat. They scream horror movie characters, and I mean by that is they're pretty two-dimensional. There is their basic, here's what my goal is, and there's not many colors to be painted in with their characters. It does feel a bit lackluster in the character department, but again, I like the Jud character. I think there was a hero to be had here. Same thing with Manny, same thing with Donna. There is some really strong characters here that you end up getting connected with, so when things happen to them, you are affected. I may not be like, oh my goodness, what a complex character, but the direction, especially the direction and the acting, was allowing me to kind of get invested more. Then we got some of the backstory. All of this kind of worked together to make it flow through. I would have chopped out maybe 15 minutes in this movie, and it's some of the scares that, again, I did like, but I'm like, okay, we could have cut this out to really forward, get closer to where we need with our end goal. There's a lot of ideas. This is something I thought that was the problem with the 2019 Pet Sematary. A lot of ideas. Sometimes I'm like, breathe. Let's figure out one thing. This movie definitely tries a bit too much, but again, we see Lindsey Beer really come into her own as a filmmaker, someone who has a vision, someone who definitely knows what they're doing in this industry, and I think can grow within horror especially to be such a strong filmmaker. While Bloodlines doesn't have the most inventive cinematography, while sometimes it feels a bit flat in the character department, my goodness, what this movie does is add so much more to the story. We actually focus on our Native American people who have been such an influential part to the story, but often ignored. Wow. Also, there's more women in the story. Not that that makes a huge difference, but that just kind of goes to show that I like the expansion of it. This is hard, because Stephen King is such a great author, a legendary writer, but at times I feel like his books are such great ideas that I'm like, but what if someone else would have expanded on it? And he's not the biggest sequel person. We have like Dr. Sleep. There's enough Stephen King sequel movies, but he himself has never really fleshed out his universes. So I really applaud the producers and the director and the writers for really pushing forward to do something new. This, again, is not the best horror movie I've seen this year, but I really applaud a Pet Sematary movie for not just phoning it in. We didn't go for the sad family route with the dead kid. We had an animal here, which, the animal stuff, that always affects me so much in the Pet Sematary story. There is there, but it just felt like it avoided all the cliches that it could have went and went a different route with a lot of the storytelling that you expect from Pet Sematary. Hell, that you even expect from Stephen King. We usually focus on the youth and that young adult life a lot of the time, or grown-ups. This was a really interesting story about coming of age at a different age. I spoke to the director, Lindsey Beer, which you guys can check out our interview either up here if you're seeing it after this, or you can subscribe to our channel to watch the interview. But she noted that she thinks a double feature for this would be Stand By Me and Pet Sematary 2 Bloodlines. And that really speaks to the story of the young kids and then what happens. Again, this story is much twisted, much more twisted than Stand By Me, but there's still something to be said about that journey of young men, especially going through a very hard time, what it means to be a hero, what it means to live in your family, to have the bloodlines, to be in that town. There's a lot to be said here. I was really impressed that they got away with as much as they did. Pet Sematary Bloodlines is heading to Fantastic Fest, where it premiered tonight, where this is how you saw my review, but it's also coming to Paramount Plus in early October, I believe October 6th. Check it out if you get a chance. If you're looking for a good horror movie, this is fun to watch during the spooky season. You don't need all these massive connections to the Pet Sematary universe, but if you are a fan, you'll get a lot of the fun nuances and fleshing out the characters. And if you have nothing to do with any of this, it's a fun horror movie with some good gore, some good tense stuff, and something to say. Something I did not expect from this. Alright guys, what did you think of my review? What do you think of the film? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. Let's talk about Pet Sematary and Stephen King right down below.